Hello and welcome to the baronial hall. It's a wintry day outside, so I have invited you inside to the fire where I am sitting so that I can then tell you about a book which will put us all back out into the freezing winter. This is a book I have talked to you about number 1 before, and I've just finished number 2, and I'm pretty excited about this one. So it is, again, John Gwynne's The Hunger of the Gods, which was number 2 after The Shadow of the Gods. Fantasy, epic high fantasy, brought to us by Orbit. Oh my golly gosh. I mean, the baronial hall or the fire, I think this is one of the things that John Gwynne, pops into his book every so often about, people gathering around the fire so they can tell the story. Well, let me tell you a story. I did tell you about number 1 when I'd read it and gone, oh my God, this is about the most exciting epic fantasy that I had read in a long time. Bit reminiscent of, well, just epic fantasy that I love, the Tad Williams, the Brandon Sanderson, those sort of authors. And most of you know me as being a fairly eclectic reader. I cannot put these down. I don't know how I survived between the first one and getting this far. And now, as I suspect, to not my distress really, that it's number 2 in what is possibly a trilogy, but it might be more. I'm going to have to wait for the next one. So that's a bit sad. Boy, I had such a laugh and such an adventure. And I think it was one of those books where David said to me, so what's it like and what sort of fantasy is this? Because he's not a fantasy reader. And I said, well, it's a bit sort of like, not the Game of Thrones in that there's not all that, can I say this word? No, I won't say it. But this is not sexy, put it that way. Not really. It's definitely not as sort of violent, though mind you, there's some great fights and slayings and sword wieldings and lots of axe and sex wielding and seax, not sex, or seax wielding. So it does get fairly bloodthirsty. But whereas in book 1 I felt we were very much being introduced to our main threads and our main characters, in love with almost all of whom I fell. Look at that grammar. In this one, we're getting really into the meat of our narratives, and the big stuff is happening. So David said, but is it Viking-y? What makes it Viking? Is it the Viking gods? No, they're not the Viking gods. These gods have come straight out of John Gwynne's brain, and they are, clan gods. If you're not clan gods, by that I mean they're animal, almost totemic gods. So we've got, dragon god, we have Slick Reefer, we've got a wolf god, we've got a bear god, but they're very much Nordic. It's very Nordic or Norse feel, and even the language, the landscape that we're put into is very Nordic and very bloody cold at times. This is why we are in the baronial hall, so I can warm up. If you're not a fantasy reader, and a customer had said to me, so what do you get from fantasy? Why do you read it? And apart from the sheer escapism, which is a very huge, big tick for me, and an essential in between probably some of that more pared back literary prose that I often enjoy as well. I think that, and I'm going to do that thing where people say, not that I'm going to lecture you about this, because I probably am, but as we all know, fantasy is also deals with all of the issues that are contemporary. So we've got these different clans, and they're all going to fight with each other. Well, I wonder what that might refer to in our world. And we have slavery. We have the thralls who are sort of tainted, again, different. So we're dealing with difference. We deal with identity, about growing into identity, into greed, power, corruption, our brains as important as brawn, and probably about how you make your family, who are the people you're loyal to, that you are loyal to, why will you turn around to mid-fight when you're doing okay? Why will you run back and rescue somebody who will then put yourself back into danger? So it's got all the big themes going on, but at a pace that it's gleeful. It's like one of those wild rides. You're sort of going, ha, like this. You're kind of screaming, but we're kind of laughing at the same time. I suppose as a child, I used to watch TV shows where some things that were going on were, because I was such a sort of susceptible child, I would spend a lot of time looking at television like that. And I do this when I read as well, when I find it's almost too much, a little bit overwhelming. I actually put the book down and say, I can't look, can't look, can't look, can't read. And I have to put it down for a while and then come back to it and get another bit. And I spent a lot of time doing this with The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. I can only say that convert yourselves if you're not a fantasy reader. And if you really want that epic saga, everything in there, from romance to slicing off heads to fighting he has some insane characters in there, to the sort of the mythology and the plotting and the cunning and the sheer evil of some people and the sheer goodness of others. If you want all of that in your story, don't go anywhere else. Just come for this one. That's it.